Here we are on episode 126 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. This is our opportunity every single week to grow, build, dream out our junk removal dream, do all the things. This is the opportunity we have to see things a little bit different than we did before the program today. And as always, I'm Andy Weins, your host, and this week I'm joined by Howard Lim. Howard, how are we doing today?
Excellent. Glad to be here, Andy.
So, as always, everyone knows my pre-show is how do I pronounce your name, and then we go from there. So, why are you on the show? Let's just dig right into it. Easy question. What brings you on the show today?
Talk about business. The good, the bad,
I like
and the
it.
ugly.
Well, there we go. Oh, you mean business isn't always beautiful and fun and sunshine and rainbows?
No, not always. Not always unicorns, right?
Not always unicorns, right? That's what we planned for. Yeah, the business plan and the pro forma look really pretty on paper, and then we get out in the real world. So, what's your background, Howard? What do you? What's your business world like?
Sure. My background is, well, actually, it's a new category. I register with the government. It's where we design businesses for maximum potential, where we combined two essential yet crucial elements, which is business models and branding.
Okay, so explain it to me in layman's terms.
Okay, so what we do is that we look at how to maximize a company's profitability by looking at its business model, what it's offering, to whom, and how accurate is its offering, and how does it cut through all the garbage so it actually is above all the heap in a sense of the consumer, or let's say client or consumer, and then how is it actually reflected as a brand in a way that people could actually have an expectation about the product, service, or information, and then actually have an expectation around it, and then match the expectation with an experience. Most expectations are not matched with experience. So what we do is we create that harmony and alignment between the value of the company and how it's represented and how it's actually experienced.
Is it a marketing play? Are we talking? I mean, is it a positioning play? What exactly is it?
So it's not marketing. It really, what happens is before marketing. A lot of people get confused between branding and marketing. They consider it one and the same, but it's not at all the same. Branding is really the foundation, and it's really the stability, the foundation. I also call it the DNA behind your idea. Okay, to build its equity, to build its value over time. Let's say Nike doesn't happen overnight, Apple doesn't happen overnight, but they had to be positioned properly in the quote unquote marketing space, but they had to be positioned and then built. And then marketing is about promoting, you could say promoting what the brand's about. Okay. So let's just say that, when it comes to building a brand, one of the key elements, for example, would be what is its brand promise? What's its unique value proposition? What's its brand promise? What is its philosophy? Okay. And then marketing's job is to push it through the channels and say, here's what this brand's about. This is what they stand for. This is what makes it unique and different from everybody else. So that's really the sequence is you start off with the brand first, and then you use marketing to promote it. And before branding, quite honestly, you start off with a really solid business model first, then you build a brand around it, then now you market it.
So okay. So you're not taking new companies, you're taking existing companies that have some data, that have some idea of who they are, and then building out or implementing the process, the system, what exactly it is.
Actually, it is a system. I call it my SIM system, and actually, it is for startups to Fortune 100s and anybody and for any company, no matter where they're at in their business cycle. So they could be at the very beginning, flushing out their ideas, and they want to figure out how feasible their ideas are. I help out companies figure out, well, let's figure out what the concept is. Let's get it to where we get a feasibility study, get some feedback, and then go to step 2. With bigger companies, you're right. With what we do 80% of the time, we take companies and they reach the lid. They simply don't know how to get past that glass ceiling. And that's when we tweak their positioning so they could actually grow and scale their business?
Well, I mean, let's talk about it. I have a junk removal business here in the Milwaukee area. I'm really confident in our brand. We didn't have a great brand, just the logos, the trademarks, like little things like that, right? I'm very particular, make sure that we own the trademarks, the logos, the name. We're actually doing a rebrand next week. We're announcing it. So we're rebranding to Camo Crew Responsible Junk Removal because I really want to highlight how important it is that we differentiate from the 800 guy junks of the world that are going out there with dump trucks and throwing things in the landfill. I want to highlight how our warehouse is different, how we're more environmentally sound. And we don't only talk about it on our website, we actually do it. And you can see it visually represented in our trucks and our processes and our warehouse, in the education we do, in the community. So that's all about that brand positioning. So like in the junk removal space, let's talk about what are the questions you ask? How do people in junk removal differentiate, right, from chucking the truck, the guy that, is just going out there banging out jobs and, taking things to the landfill?
Yeah. So first of all, you're right. It comes and this model I create works for any company,
Mhm.
and if it's B2B, B2C, B2G, it doesn't matter what industry they're in. I've created a lot of new categories that everyone's probably touched, heard, or experienced. The point is, one of the first questions I ask, what is your philosophy? What is your philosophy? Here's a key component to this, by the way, and I'll talk about this further. The philosophy that's coupled with its values equals what is the brand ideology. So the first place I go to is, what is your philosophy? And then I help companies flush out their philosophy so they're clear of what truly makes them unique beyond making a dollar.
Yep. You said philosophy, because I'm going to make a banner
Yeah.
out of this. Philosophy plus what?
Plus values. Usually there's
Yep.
5 values in a company equals the brand ideology. It's like its core principle. This is like, in a sense, what makes up countries. And when
Yep.
these things don't align, things go astray.
Oh yeah, no. I got you. Well, that's so. I use we use EOS, and
Uh-huh.
this is very much a lot of what they talk about. IDIOLG. There we go. I'm gonna make this right now. Spelling is not my what do you call it?
Forte.
Not my forte. I'm a numbers guy. I do a lot of hillbilly math. So I can make math look great. So I can make math look great. It's see, now I pressed the wrong button. See, I pressed the wrong button. This is why hit the edit button, not the there we go. See? That's why normally Taylor's doing this stuff. I beat him to it today. That's why I'm not in charge. There we go. All right,
There you
philosophy.
go.
There we go. Philosophy plus values equals brand ideology. Okay, so let's talk about this. What are your thoughts on mission statement, vision statement? So a lot of old school business are like, what's your mission statement, right? How does this fit in?
Okay, so they all differ, and it depends on who you talk to, by the way, too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
for like EOS, very familiar with the book. In fact, one of my clients, after going through a massive rebranding with them, they're like, "Yeah, have you heard of EOS?" I said, "No, I have not heard of EOS. I've never heard of the book Traction. I read it. It is good, but it is still different the way that I approach." Yeah, exactly. Beautiful book.
Readily, yeah. Right. I mean, that's how I have a handful of books quickly at my disposal. That's one of them. Yes.
So there's things that we're aligned on, but there's things that are very distinct and different. So
Mhm.
how does mission, and you said philosophy, and was it
Well,
vision? Vision?
so in EOS, it's mission vision equal
Right,
traction, right? You have a
right,
mission, you have a vision, traction,
right,
and then, but a lot of other companies, like when I work for corporate America and other companies, are like, this is our mission statement, and then these are our
right,
values. So it's like,
right.
are you replacing the word mission statement with philosophy? Is
No.
it more specific? So tell me the relationship there. Do you get rid of the mission
Sure.
statement and it's a philosophy instead?
So so mission statements are great. It's kind of like you're looking at goals, but then once
Yep.
you achieve those in the mission statement, then basically the mission statement's done. A
Hmm.
philosophy statement for me is quite honestly like the Declaration of Independence, right?
Mm.
It's something that it's permanent. It's really the glue the core that keeps everything adhered. Okay. So for me, a philosophy is, why does the company exist and what is its quote unquote process of what it does that makes it so unique? Like, there's a way that people solve problems, right? And the way that they approach that and the way they do it is very unique and distinct from all others. And for me, that starts to build the philosophy, okay? Versus a mission is more based on goals. And then a vision, by the way, in my book, is about what legacy you're going to leave behind. Like, how does your actions actually have a repercussion for generations to come? So it's really looking at not just the foundation, but what kind of foundation should you build? So when it comes to like coring the actual ground to see what the earth is made of, to figure out what kind of foundation you should start with. So that's how deep I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah, when you said Declaration of Independence, I often default back to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And
Exactly.
the thing about that is life, liberty, right? Those are simply defined, right? We can use terms, right?
Right.
Life and liberty. So it's you're entitled to your life, right? Can't be taken from you, and your livelihood, right? Liberty, you have the freedom of movement, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right? And here's a beautiful thing: pursuit of happiness is the most subjective term ever, because every single person has a different pursuit, and even you are going to have different pursuits throughout your life. So I love that. So I think about the entire Declaration. It's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's it. That I don't need to read anything else. And so when I encounter people in this world that want to question or take away my life, my liberty, or my pursuit of happiness, well, now we have conflict, right? Because you have personal freedoms, I have personal freedoms. However, your personal freedoms, so exactly, if you want to drink and drive, you want to drink, fine. You want to drive, fine. When you put those two things together, you're now, right, impacting potentially my life, my liberty, and my pursuit of happiness, because you're choosing your freedom over mine, right? And so, like, I'm good with, harsh laws for drinking and driving, for example, right? Now, if someone wants to smoke weed in their basement, I don't care. Right, because it doesn't negatively impact my life, my liberty, or pursuit of happiness. It does not change my life whatsoever. And so that's a anecdotal argument, right, of how I see things. I'm a raging libertarian, so I'm all about everyone does their own thing, so long as it, right, just don't fuck with my guns or money, right? That's my that's my philosophy when it comes to government, right? Let me keep my guns and money, and you do you, right? That's it. That's my pursuit of happiness,
Exactly. But you're exactly right, though. It's like, how solid. I mean, that's freaking awesome. Can you imagine, in my opinion, the forefathers going through that deep thinking to be able to have something so substantial, and when someone tries to tweak that, it's just not going to go. It's just not good. But anyways,
but I like that. But I like that, right? I mean, it's almost like the Bill of Rights. Because I'm now where you mentioned Declaration of Independence. It's almost like the Bill of Rights or the values, right? The philosophy is right. That came first.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You have the Bill of Rights, which is you have the Declaration of Independence. Happiness. It's like, okay, well, what's the first bill? Oh, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right? And then the right to bear arms, freedom of assembly, right? You can't your house can't be taken you by the government for quarters. It's like, oh, those are all good things. Yeah, we should have, right, and those are consistent with that philosophy. And to your point, those values are a little more specific, and yet the philosophy lasts the test of time. I mean, go turn on the news right now, especially with the election. It's like, well, is this what our forefathers wanted? It's like, well, it's lasted 246 years. Like it's 48 years, right? It's like, it's been working, right? Like it's a pretty good base, And yet we're not facing the tyranny of a third, third party country, unfairly taxing us. Now our own country unfairly taxes us.
Right. That's another subject itself, but you're right.
Oh no, that's another podcast. That's a late night podcast. We won't get into that.
Yeah, I have to share some whiskey and beer around that one.
Yeah. It's not for the faint at heart. This is a kid show.
But nevertheless, but you see though how you're exactly right with that comparison, right?
Yep.
It's like that becomes the core ideology. So you got the philosophy and you got the values that become the ideology of that business, of really what it stands for. And then basically everything, all the activity should be revolved around that. Okay.
Yep.
Where companies start to chase their own tails when they don't know who they are, and then they start marketing whatever they want to market because they're trying to get, whatever a sales tactic in or whatever it may be. They don't even realize it. They're destroying their brand constantly.
So what do the customers see? Do they see the brand ideology? What do they see?
Well, they experience it and they feel it. So they get a sense of it. They go, they don't need to know the philosophy, they don't need to know the values, but they could definitely feel it. Okay. It's like, well, let's take Apple, for example. I've been an Apple advocate for that's how I created my whole company, because it gave me the flexibility to be creative in ways that allow me to distinguish myself amongst everybody else in that space. And that was designed for creatives. And so when I started to look up Steve Jobs' philosophy, is allowing people to be more creative. And the other thing about the I that stands for iPad, iPod, it stands for integration. So his whole philosophy is design things so everything's integrated with his closed system. And there's a reason for it, because it's about quality. So if you break things down, these things are always consistent when they're bringing in a new product, or they want to create a new space in the market, or quote unquote be competitive in a new space in a new market or a new category. The point being is that I could feel the sense of quality. I could feel their sense of integration. I could feel the use and simplicity versus other products I've used before that are not Macintosh based. Other companies are now catching on, but Apple is original. They're the ones that created the freaking iPhone. When I used to fight with people, and people go, I don't understand the iPhone. How is that phone different from everything else? And I said, well, the first thing is that it's not a phone. It has a CPU in it, and it's allowing you to do things that you cannot do with a regular phone. It's a disruptor in the space. But anyways, so it's about when companies keep that at core internally, right? The philosophy and the values. The experience starts to happen to the customers / consumers, okay, or / clients, right? They start to feel that, and that's where it matters the most. A brand image is the most important element to a brand, and it's the most valuable asset. And that means the brand's not what you say, is what everyone else says about you.
It's interesting. So it's maybe a year ago. I was rapping, I was going along, and I said, marketing is what you tell people. Your brand is what people tell you about yourself. Right. But it's right. The brand, and I also, that adage, like, it's not what you say or what you did, it's the way you make people feel. That's what they'll remember. And so you talk about this brand ideology, it's how they're feeling about your brand. Like with Apple, you grab their product, you're like, oh, it's a well-built, right? It's tight. Right. It's not loose. It's not plasticky, right? Oh, it's simple. Like even when let's go back to the, not the iPad. I can't, the MP3 player. Why can't I think about iTunes? What am I thinking about? The iPod. Wow, my brain. iPod. I couldn't even think. Right. It was like, let's have one. I hated it at first. I'm like, where are all the buttons? I had a BlackBerry. I'm like, I want all the buttons. And they're like, no, you have a center button and a circle. It's like, what is this shit? Right. And then even I'm an Android guy, right? So I know who I am, right? Even my Android, when they got rid of the buttons on the bottom, I got twitchy. I'm like, no, I want my buttons. And now it's like, wait, hold on. It's just well, what are we doing here? And it's because Apple, when the iPhone came out, they're like, no buttons, no back button, no nothing. It is intuitive, right? They're watching people, right? And even Apple, it's like what their slogan is: think different. That's it. Right. It's like, well, think different. Right. Like, well, think different about what? Everything. And it's like, oh shit. Right. All right, yep. And oh, by the way, when you want to think different, we got a tool for that, right? We can record the music. We can write the design before the software. And so I'm not an Apple guy. I have an iPad. My daughter has one. I'm either too smart or too dumb for Apple products. Even as a kid, we had Apple at our school or whatever, Macintosh back in the day. And as soon as the PC came out, as soon as Windows 95 came out, I'm like, I'm a PC guy, right? Back when they had the Apple versus PC commercial, even though we were knocking the PC guy, I'm like, I'm the PC guy. I'm good with that. I got Android. I got a traditional, I got a Yoga, whatever. I've had HPs and Lenovo's and Acer computers all my life, right? And yet there's times where I'm like, oh, that's pretty intuitive. That's pretty intuitive that your iPod, your computer, and your phone are all linked up. You get the same messages, everything's synced up. right? And Google from a software standpoint has done it, but they don't manage the hardware, right? So it's like, well, it's close.
Right.
So and so yeah, Apple's a great example. And I also get a kick out of it when I talk marketing, right? It's like you talk about a handful of products, right? Or Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple. It's like, yeah, because we all know those products, right? Like we all know what the feeling, or like Patagonia. Patagonia, I think, is a great brand identity, right? Like, and I was like, what was interesting was I remember North Face, maybe like 10 years ago. North Face was like the expensive one, right? And then Patagonia came out. I was like, it's just another expensive fleece sweatshirt, right? And then like I saw it more and more. I was like, well, what do these mountains mean? Well, what does this mean? What does this mean? It's like, wow, there's a real brand behind this, not just this overly expensive fleece jacket, right? So I found that was interesting. And so again, I'm not a Patagonia guy. I'm not Apple, right? I'm more frugal. But yeah, I still like, oh, it's a cool brand. Like I respect the brand because I can feel it, right? And also, you look at the customers, you're like, oh, that looks like a person that would wear that thing and support that brand because they also do these other things, you know? Well, anyways, that's and I'll say of the 6 buckets of business, marketing, sales, operations, the thing you do, resources that are human in the numbers, marketing, right? Which is not sales. Like everyone, a lot of people want to lump sales and marketing together. Not right. Right. And even me, I lump branding and marketing together, which is there's a difference, right? Of those 6 buckets, marketing it's a bottom 3 for me. It's not something that comes natural. Like we got good branding, good logos, you know, all the stuff. And that's by other people's designs. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Not my vision necessarily at the time. So
yeah, there's different ways. Like the way that I like working is co-create with my clients. What you're referring to is where a lot of companies do this. They take things internally and they go, here it is, right? For me, it's a process. It's a co-creative process between the vision and the philosophy of the company, and then having that where actually it's manifested, you could say, from those ideas into reality by a tangible look and feel.
Yeah. Let's talk about your process. Is it you have a team? Is it a template? You fill in the blanks? Do you do kind of one-on-one consulting? What does that all look like?
So I created what's called the SIM system, SIM. The first is strategy. And before even getting into the strategy, what I always do is an online brand assessment. So what I do for an hour, it's I take an hour and I use Zoom and I record the whole session. And what I do is I review a client's brand. That could be and what I mean by their brand, I mean their entire identity. And that could be their logo, the name of the company, their website, everything that's called what they call in the branding world a touch point, except I call it aspiration engagement points. Anything they use to represent their brand. Okay. And I go through it like their website and I'll go, okay, this is wrong. This is right. This is wrong. You should do this. Where's your value proposition? Where's your call to action? What are you trying to tell people? Who's your target market? Why is it off? da, 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 da. And so I go through and I mark up everything. And then let's say we talk about their logo. And I tell them big difference between like their logo and really a brand mark to create what's called the brand equity of a company. Most people don't realize this. And then I talk about what is brand equity, how it's not a brand mark, how it's a logo, where it's not a differentiation, how to look things up to find out, if it's trademarking worthy by uspto.gov. So I do that for a full hour. And I basically assess the entire brand. And then after that, if they want to continue on, which is about 99.9% everyone wants to continue on, then I show them my SIM system. And it's an intellectual property I created over 15 years, but it starts with S for strategy. Everything I do, it's like a half day to a 4-day session, depending on the size of the company and where they're at in quote unquote their business cycle. Okay. And so we usually do that in person, although I do it online because I work with people all over the world. And we break down and we start to define who they are, their philosophy, their core message, their brand promise, their brand personality, the architecture of their brand. We look at intellectual property. I get into what is their business model? How can we improve their business model? We look at strategic partnerships. We look at all the different stakeholders for now and into the future of how we create maximum value for everybody. So after the strategy is done, which is the S, then I move into implementation. And if they want something world class, then we do everything in house. We come up with the right name, right tagline, right website. And sometimes exactly what you're saying, it's like it's not so much too is if it's a new company or existing, let's say an existing company, quite honestly, about 50% of the time we're having to adjust the name because the name itself they created is too limiting for after we figure out what's under the hood of how expansive we're going to make the architecture of the brand, meaning like how many more revenue streams can we bring in and how many more people, groups of people, how we can make it more meaningful to X, and Y, and Z. We find out the name a lot of time is too limiting as a brand name. Okay. So then what we do on I for implementation, there's two parts to this. What happens internally with the company. So a lot of times I help companies set up system processes, whether it's intellectual property, software, or if I'm working with their team in conjunction to understand their sales strategy, right? For example, and then how they're actually going to have a higher close rate by having, like, say, software that's built in. Not sure, but that's how we look at things of how we then execute. And then on building our brand identity, I have a whole system where we do storefronts, we do interiors, signage, billboards, radio spots, TV spots, animation. The list goes on. Anything that has to do with their, but we integrate everything so it has one look and feel. And then the M stands for management. Now we look at how we're going to work with their team, the VPs, upper management, and people on the street, and how we're going to actually have everyone work together and actually create systems for accountability. And that it's a little bit like EOS, but still different. Okay.
Yep.
It's still about more focus on not two parts besides the business, but of course protecting the brand.
And you said 50, oh no, I know. Like everything you're saying, I'm like, man, I'm probably like 50% compliant there and 20% there, and like, oh yeah, like I get it, right? Like protecting that brand is important. The other thing you said that earlier was interesting is like when people are putting out content or initiatives or dollars that are inconsistent with that philosophy or those values, right? Let's go back to it. With the brand ideology. Like I thought about this. So we get a lot of opportunities to sponsor stuff. And so I've always said there's three conditions. It's veteran related, it's environment related, or it's in one of our target, I call it target zip codes or our home zip codes, right? It used to be our hometown and only our home, like, and now it's like our target zip code. So if it checks all three, it's an absolute yes. If it checks two of the three, it's probably a yes. If it checks one of the three, is there any other consideration? And if it's 0 for 3, don't even, so it's like, oh, it's a golf outing. It's 45 minutes away and it's for cystic fibrosis. It's like, well, I'm sure that's a noble cause. Doesn't fit any of our things. Like, let's not even talk about it. Right. Because then you're if your dollars go everywhere, then you're not being specific. And people are like, well, what do you even stand for? Right. And so as simple as that is, it's like, yeah, we get to establish the boundaries. And then when we get approached for things, we get to say yes or no. Now, yes or whatever, last week or next week, we're sponsoring a golf outing. And it's like, it's local in our area and it's for veterans, not environmental. It's like, okay, well, it's for veterans and it's in one of our zip codes. Yep. Where do we send the check? Right. Because it fits what we say we do. And if we niche down even further, we're not going to do it. And again, it's really, really that simple for us. And that's a very small piece. That's where do we spend our sponsorship or charitable dollars versus there's plenty of times we have in a third-party marketing company and they'll write copy and they'll use words that are inconsistent with the language we use, and because they'll use common tongue. And I'm like, no, we don't use the word waste, for example, or garbage or junk, right? Or trash. We don't refer to, right? It's unwanted items, unwanted material, right? Things like that, donations, like not trash, not waste, not garbage, because it doesn't fit what we do, right? We do removal of unwanted items. That's the business I'm in. Now, some of those things may end up in the landfill because that's the reality of our business. However, I don't go into it with the anticipation of everything's trash, everything's garbage, or the word refuge. That's an older, like government. You said, B to G earlier, like the government calls everything refuge. They're the only ones that still use the word refuge. And it's like, well, that still applies, right? I mean, it still applies in our world. And yet I would never use that word in copy.
Right.
Like, people like refuge. What is refuge?
So you're Andy, you're nailing it. So That's what you call, and what's important when it comes to management, it's called, what most people have is a style guide, but they don't have what I call brand manual, which is a
Yeah.
lot deeper. Style
Oh,
guide
yeah.
is like, okay, what fonts are used, what colors are used, but what
Yep.
you're talking about is
Oh, yeah.
specifically the personality behind the brand of what it should say, what it should express, what is its personality, how you should be, what are the do's and don'ts, but also what is the tone. So you're exactly
Oh, yeah.
right. You're doing things in a way that actually is a way to control the brand, so it's very clear what it stands for and what it is.
It's interesting you bring this up. Now I want to. Now I'm looking into my marketing for. So I do keynote speaking, right? And that
Right.
exactly what you're saying there is what is the tone? Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's one thing to say, hey, here are the fonts, here are the colors, here's the blah blah blah, right?
Right.
But it's like, what are
Right.
the what are we really saying here?
Right.
I have some copy, I have marketing. I'm looking at what'd you call it? You called it marketing
Brand manual.
brand manual.
Yeah, brand manual. I'd say it's a new category that I've been creating. Most people use a brand style guide, but it's
Yeah, no,
like a
I'm
brand manual.
yeah,
It's really,
yeah, no,
really critical in the tone of your copy, and it specifies. It should specifies. Hey, write like when a copy, like, is it like friendly? Is it green? Is it leadership? Is it supportive? Is it loving? It's da 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 da. So that way, you're exactly right. That starts to support the marketing team and advertising and PR to make sure that everything's in sync and in alignment.
mhm.
Okay, that strengthens your position, which builds the quote unquote brand equity.
Yeah, I'm like looking at my stuff right now, like, yeah, that I don't have anything like that, and that would be interesting. Huh.
Yeah, yeah. But you're doing a great job. You're much further along than most people that interview me on podcasts or being on stage. Put it that way. I've been
Oh,
doing this
because
freaking for 37 years, dude.
yeah,
Good job.
all behind this rough junk removal demeanor, there's a business owner that gives a shit. Like I really like. Well, that's the thing. Like fonts and all that shit matter, but it's like, yeah, how do I want people to feel when they interact with my brand? Like that is it,
Exactly.
and especially in this space, like I have an ex girlfriend. She's a VP of marketing, director of
Mhm.
marketing, whatever, for a construction company. And she'd always
Mhm.
say to me, she's like, "You love business. You're obsessed with business. You're a smart guy. She goes, why the hell do you do junk removal? It's like you're a trash guy, and it's like it's what I love doing, right? It's like because it's like it. I grew up doing it. I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. Like it's like yeah, I could probably get smart about a lot of different things, and yet I like junk removal, right? It's like it's my thing. Like I have a podcast. Here we are talking about it. It's like I give a shit about. I put the wrong shoulder. Like I give a shit about this brand, this logo. Like I tell you
Right.
guys, when you put this on, right? I mean, to a point where on Monday the 7th of October, we are announcing our new name. We're rebranding to Camo Crew Responsible Junk Removal, and that was an initiative of Q4 last year, right? Because I want people to say, well, why responsible? Hey, it's a great question. Let me tell you, right? I want
Right.
them to interact. I want them to ask
Right.
questions. I want them to see that we are different than other companies, right? Because it's a feeling, right?
Right.
The analogy I use is when you're hungry, you can go to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger. You can go to a high-end steakhouse and get a steak. Either way, you leave no longer hungry.
Right.
However, we know what those two very different experiences look like. We know we're going to pay more. We know we're going to dress different. We know we're going to act different. We know our time commitment is different. We know we're going to, right? Everything's different. And yet they solve the same problem. They fix your hunger.
Right.
And so
Right.
same with with junk removal, it's like, oh, you want stuff out of your house? Fine. We can go get Chuck in a truck that's going to load all of it, take it to the local landfill, dump it out and go on to the next job, right? They may or may not be insured. They may or may not be uniformed. You may or may not have background checks and you may or may not trust them in your house, right? They got the stuff out, right? They solve the same problem. Or you have guys that are insured, they're licensed, they're uniformed, and they have warehouses. They sort the material. They keep the stuff out of the landfill. It's like either way we solve the problem, and yet it felt different when we hired Camo Crew. And that's we're coming up on 1,400 reviews. We'll get probably this next couple days
Wow.
here. 1,400 reviews with a 98% satisfaction rate of 5-star reviews. So it's like, Okay, people are feeling it. People are they're feeling the difference on junk removal. This is not wedding dress shopping or vacation, right? You're not putting a lot of research into this, and yet they feel different and they feel empowered enough to leave us a review and say really nice things about us, right? When I hear, hey, the guy showed up on time, they were clean, they were polite, it's like, okay. Because when you hire people to come in your house, what's the big chief complaints? They weren't on time, they were jerks, they did half the work and charged me twice as much. It's like, okay, well, let's just not do all those things, and we're already ahead of 90% of the contractors that come in your house.
You're exactly right. By the way, having it where you remove things that are unwanted, by the way, is a hot subject. And so you are, so you're for your girlfriend or who the
ex-girlfriend,
eliminated. Okay. But the great thing is that you actually, in a sense, are ahead of the curve.
Well, because I got to look at what does the market want, right? If I look at the waste industry over the last 25 years, it used to be you could take anything but nuclear waste to your local landfill or dump, and you were probably good. Where are you located, Howard? Where are you out of?
Los Angeles.
Okay, so California, right? Actually, I mean, I hate. How do I say? Maybe I don't hate California. I don't know.
Say it.
I hate the politicians in California. I would never want to live there. I go to my brother. My brother lived in Culver City for a couple of years. So I've spent time in LA. I had a business down in Lemon Grove, which is in San Diego County. And so I'm familiar with California, right? California has some of the best laws that actually had pushed the federal laws, which is good, right? I mean, now you guys have taken to a fucking extreme that's insane to most people at this point. At one point, though, even in California, you could take about anything you wanted to a county landfill or city dump or whatever. Over the last 25 years, that has changed significantly because there's more regulation. And I'm all about that, right? I am very capitalistic, except for when it comes to the environment. We have one planet. Let's not screw it up, right? So I'm in capitalistic and I'm an environmentalist, which those two things kind of compete. I'm all about regulation, especially our industry. Our industry is extremely underregulated. And it's our job to be responsible. So I want to be ahead of the curve because I know the consumer cares, right? And I also know that landfills take less and less stuff, right? So it's like, okay, consumers want more service. Landfills offer less service. There's a gap here, right? And I also know recycling, it takes a lot of work to recycle, right? Anything you read is like, does recycling really work? Is recycling worth it? It's like, it is when it's done right. The problem is when recycling's done wrong. Like margins in recycling are so tiny that when it's contaminated material, there is no money in it.
Right.
So it's our job. This is the pavement I'm pounded in our industry in junk removal. It's our responsibility to be the most professional, the most knowledgeable when it comes to the things within your home, in your business, and how do we take them out without introducing them to landfill. That's a huge gap, a huge opportunity. And the more I talk about it, it's twofold. More customers I get that also want that solution, and more vendors that take stuff hit me up. Like, so I got a guy for mattresses and wood and electronics and appliances and clothes, right? And I consistently get opportunities. People be like, hey, I heard you talk about this. Hey, I see your company's doing that. We actually buy the thing that other people are throwing away. I'm like, cool, let's do that. Because again, that feeling of the brand, it's like, yes, I'm a veteran. We're a veteran organization. There's that. We got the Camo pants, right? We show up in the big trucks, like the veteran piece. And also, right, then I tie it in, right? We've served our country. Now let us serve our community, right? To make the planet a better place to live. And so like, that's the brand promise is that when you hire us, we're going to do things the most environmentally responsible way possible. And we have the data and the processes to prove it.
Beautiful. And by the way, thank you for serving my nephew just graduated from the Navy Academy, and he's now officially a Marine, an officer.
That's a big deal. I got nothing but respect for the Navy because I'm a non-swimming individual, and the idea of being on a boat, no desire whatsoever to be at sea. And then the Marines, I got nothing but love for the Marine Corps. I was in Iraq with Marines, and they're a special breed of individual. Like they are.
Yeah, they are. My wife is actually a Marine too. So
Oh, wow.
I keep in shape, you know.
So you said you've been doing this 37 years in some capacity of marketing, branding, all the things. What has that been? What's your background
Well,
been?
well, my background, 8 years of college education, was in design, uh, advertising, fine arts, when it came to computer programming, and so it kind of all came together. The time
Yeah.
I finished my schooling, it all came together where I was multidisciplinary. That the Macintosh allowed me to do my own typesetting, set out stuff for
Mm.
film, da da da. Where at the beginning, you had to send out to 5 different organizations, and I realized I could do it all by myself. And that was my whole position at the very beginning. I could do faster, more creative, and for less price.
And
And that's
that
how it
was
all
all
started.
it was all design work. So you were doing all the tactical boots on ground design work for companies.
Exactly. I was helping out with their advertising, but I was all done through digitally through the computer, and nobody was
Mhm.
doing that. So I was able to do things faster than any other agency, and then I was able to do things more creative, and then I was able to do it less expensive. So
Yeah.
I was like that triangle. I was actually collapsed that triangle. We could only get two sides, quality or
Yeah.
speed or price, and I
Yes.
was able to do all three.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's good, fast, or cheap, right? You can only have one. You can
Right.
only have two of the three, right? Well, that's
Right.
interesting.
Right.
And then so now so because you've had all the reps of all these companies, you've also built. Hey, here are all the things we can. You can make the post or the flyer or the pamphlet or the whatever look pretty as shit. If it's got no substance, no foundation, no legs, what does it matter? It's just another piece of collateral you're paying me to create that may or may not move the needle versus having a cohesive brand around the brand ideology where the brand ideology this very tactical, sterile, almost filled out piece of paper really defines the rules of the game. So when you do peruse collateral, when you do decide to spend money on advertising, when you make videos or whatever, it all ties back to that framework you've built in the sim system. I like it.
Exactly, exactly. And you know what's funny, Andy? When I look back, because I saw all this stuff happening, so pretty much a visionary. Like I saw and it took 10 years before it caught up. And unfortunately, I was telling a lot of people, my peers about that were designers and agency, this is going to take hold. What's
Yep.
happening with the Macintosh computer? They didn't understand it because they didn't want to change because they're used to doing everything by hand. Unfortunately, they all started to disappear, right?
Yeah.
When I break down and where branding came, I was doing branding before branding became popular, became a term. I was doing it like 30 odd years ago. Branding became popular about 12 years ago. The point
Mm.
being is this: branding came from two worlds, and it happened to be that I understood those two worlds, and they're separate. Advertising, which is all about positioning,
Yep.
and design, which is how to engage people emotionally and communicate to them through the printed piece, like design, literally design, how to
Yep.
actually move them through the layout, through typography, through a photo or images, right? So when you put the two together, it's all about positioning and then creating things that are emotionally involving them, engaging the customer. So really, honestly, what I found out is like brand. That's where branding comes from. So when people don't have that background of strong advertising, it's all about positioning. Totally separate field than graphic design, where graphic design is now getting your hands dirty and figuring out what would be a beautiful layout. But you're right. Without having a good position, a great design piece is only a great design piece. It
Yep.
doesn't move the needle exactly what you're saying when it comes to a company's revenue.
Yeah, that's all. I'm an operations guy. I'm a tactical guy, right? I'm looking at my ROI, right? I need 10x return. For every dollar I spend, I need 10, it to show up with 10 of its buddies. And that's the
Right.
issue I have with a lot of stuff that is more brand awareness. I recognize that we have to do some things that are non-quantifiable. Like when I go to the parade, I go to the parade in
Right.
Menominee Falls. It's my hometown. I'm not like, okay, we got $1,000 invested in the parade. I need $5,000 in jobs the next 6 weeks, right? Because I also know it's a feel good. We're in the community. It's one more touch point. We're doing the candy, whatever, right? It's like, got it. And yet, like from a feeling standpoint, it's like, yep, we're local, right? We're not we look like a lot of people think that we're a big brand. One of the best compliments I get is, hey, are you guys a franchise or a corporate? Because our branding is tight. It looks good, right? So it's like you could be professional and local. Often you got to trade off one or the other. It's like, nope. And like when people
Nope.
meet me, it's like, hey, I'm the owner. Like, here I am throwing the candy to the kids. Like, there's the high school I went to. Like, here I am. Like, it's like,
Right.
so it touches on that local feel.
Right.
From advertising, like when I spend money on Google AdWords, I got to see that ROI. When I spend money right in a print application, print, I got to see the ROI, because I can say this is like traditional advertising, like, back in the day, classifieds. I still know guys that do junk removal. They run the cheapy classified ads because they get the ROI. There's a lady, where was she? I interviewed her one time. I interviewed her on the show here. I want to say it was in Vermont or Maryland or something, but she got I don't know, it was like $125 a month for the littlest square in a free newspaper. And she's like, that is my best ROI, because who reads is older people reading the newspaper. That's her target demographic. And she's $125, it's $1,500 a year. It's like, what's the commitment there? Like, next to nothing. And she's like, oh yeah, it produces me $20,000-$30,000 in revenue every year. I'm like, how many more cheapy newspapers are there? Because you got to be in every single freebie newspaper when your companies, your customers are responding, that much at that high of a rate.
Yeah, and what you're nailing, by the way, when it comes to you at the parade, that's called brand association, building what's called brand awareness. So advertising PR, you're right. A lot of time, advertising is not about, making a huge ROI financially, but it is a currency when it comes to building your brand. So there's different types of currency. The way I look at it, there's emotional currency. Okay. Of course, there's ROI when it comes to profit and revenue currency. And there's also currency when it comes to partnership and community. So there's all kinds of currency the way I look at it. And so you're absolutely right. A lot of times not looking at ROI per se when it comes to the currency of the dollar, but it's actually a currency as far as being heard and seen as helping out the community or local community, which is huge. Okay, especially when it comes to small town.
So you said not brand awareness. Would you call it brand something else?
There's brand awareness, and then there's building the brand equity. Maybe I said brand equity. There's building the brand equity, brand awareness, and I also talked about currency, brand currency.
That's interesting. Yeah. So okay. So that is different than brand awareness, or it's in the same field, or it's like more. How do those things relate?
Okay, so how it all relates is that so this is a huge piece to the equation, and that's what makes Fortune 500s. Is that a lot of times it's creating a brand awareness, and the brand awareness is part of the ecosystem of brand equity. Brand equity is through brand association. So
that's the word, brand association. That's the word you use. You use brand association. I want to know how that. Okay, there we go. I knew I heard something in there.
Yeah. So as they see you in the parade, right?
Yep.
Okay. They say, "Oh my God, Andy's so cool. He's actually helping out our local community, being part of our local community." So the brand association to your brand is to say, "Oh, they're a good guy. They're a good company." Okay. And by the way, he's a vet on top of it. So all these things start to add up in a sense to the meaning behind the equity of your brand. And so you're right. Like if you want ROI, well, Google Ad, you definitely better be measuring that, because a lot of stuff is a bunch of junk out there, but we'll get to that in another subject. But the point being is that, but the point being is that just shows that you care, and that's massive kudos. And it's authentic, by the way. It has to be authentic. You can't just be doing it. I see all these companies they're like, oh, let's jump on a bandwagon and say we're green when we're not really green, because people think that, all the what do they call the bleeding hearts? People will say, oh, we'll get their votes or whatever. There's so much BS that's going on right now, and it's so unauthentic. But anyways, so when people see that association, right, that relationship of your brand, that's actually building, again, brand equity. So brand equity, the long story short, is brand equity actually pushes the needle when it comes to brand value. So when you look at the stock market, what's actually moving in the stock market is future earnings based on that company's equity. Exactly. Based on an intangible. Intangible, exactly, we've been discussing, feelings, emotions. The tangible would be like, let's say, some of the trademarks, whatever it may be, or the product itself. Okay, so these things start to have a huge impression on a consumer brand image of what's stored in their mind and in their heart. Okay.
See, what I like about your full system here is I'm an operations guy, and I want to see things I want things to fit into an Excel spreadsheet where I'm like, okay, this plus this equals that. This and this make that. These two things are divided like that. So then it's like, okay, if you are struggling in this area, we can identify root cause and say, okay, this is what we're struggling with here, and here's a solution. And then we go versus, well, you got to be everywhere. Marketing is being all at places at the right time to all people. It's like, well, that sounds expensive,
Right.
So no, man, I dig that. This is the most operationally minded marketing. And I would say pitch, but it's pitch, right? It's a conversation we're having.
Right.
I always tell people in sales too, like so people all the time, they find I'm a business owner, so they're like, hey, I want to bend your ear, or hey, I want to try to sell you the crap I have, so I was like, hey, let's go to lunch. I'll sit down and have lunch with you, but I got to eat every day, so let's have lunch. And then I tell people in 15 minutes, 20 minutes at lunch, when you can convince me that what you have is something I need, you don't have to do the follow-up. I'll do the follow-up. I love investing money, right? I'm a gambler at heart. It's why I'm an entrepreneur. So like, as you're telling me the system, I was like, I want to fill these fucking sheets out. I want to see what this guy tells me. I want like at first I'm like, I'm being a little cocky, right? I'm like, I know my brand's on point. I know I got this. I know I got that. Right. What I said earlier, I got 50, 60% of what you said. I'm like, yeah, I'm good there. But I'm like, well, what about the 40, 50% I'm not good? Right. Like, what am I missing? How do I work smarter, not harder? And also I believe in, compounding interest, right? Einstein said it. The greatest power in the old universe is compounding interest. It's like, well, if I spent the money today investing in my brand, right, and having this brand ideology, well, then I'm not spending as much money on Google and as much money on printed material because I'm having a higher quality interaction because we already know the play. We already know what works is going to work because we built this solid foundation on, 8 years I've been doing this full time, 8 years of data. Versus, well, this kind of worked one time. Let's do it again.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. I call it like dividends, a brand dividends. I'm actually creating a whole another book. I wrote a book called Authentic Branding. Okay, it's sold all over the world. You can find it easy on Amazon. I created another book where I just told my wife I'm gonna create a book everything about branding. Like, and I mean that seriously. Working with the smallest companies, the Fortune 100s, and then things that I've actually created as a new diction as well. Okay, that actually is more meaningful in today's world, and it has to do with because we're on the fourth generation that entered the marketplace, and they all think and act differently. So there's all kinds of little currencies, relationships that are huge opportunity to keep a brand keep moving forward from the standpoint of its sustainability, but of course its scalability as well. So yeah, you're talking about actually massive kudos when it comes to again, the brand equity and everything that goes on along with that and alignment of that. And the reason, by the way that I think, and I love numbers too, is because I got it from my dad. I'm a home brain thinker. So when I think analytically and I look at ROI, I go, well, how can that occur? Exactly, you catch on really fast. Is how does that turn into the emotional impact from the consumer that they feel like they're minimizing the risk and maximizing the value of what they have to bring to themselves, to the world, right? So my mind goes like this. Right.
So even when I started writing about the 6 buckets of business, the last one was money, and I changed it to financials, and I changed the word to numbers, right? And what you're talking about now is this brand currency, this brand equity. Those are numbers, right? And I can disassociate money from numbers, right? Right. Money is right because when we play the game right, when we hit our marks, we win. Right. When we score more points than the other team, we win. So I'm not looking at the wins and losses. I'm looking at, do we score more points than the other team? Right. And those numbers. And so that's interesting. As you were talking, I bought your book because that's how quick I operate.
Cool.
I bought it. It's $29.95. That's an expensive book. $29.95. I like it. That's a power move on Amazon. When I released my book, I think it's $14.99.
The reason why
power move.
So here's why I did that, by the way, and that's great. That's a good point because someone's like, I was in this marketing class and they're like, yeah, exactly what you said. It should be $14.95, should be $12.95. I said, no freaking way. I've built literally multi-million and 7 separate billion-dollar companies. I know what I have to bring is well worth more than the book itself.
$30. It's $30. It's like No, I saw that. I was like, my heat of the moment, I was like, this guy thinks he's worth $29.95. I gotta read the thing. Right? Is that right? Like, but you know what? In the time that we talked, I also hit buy now because I'm like, well, I mean, what are we doing? You know, $15. It's like you can read 2 shitty books for $15 a piece, or 1 great book for $30. Well, that's math, baby. You know.
Andy, you're gonna love it because why I wrote this book at the time that I wrote it. It's now been 20 years, and I think it was 5, and it's super relevant still. It's called Authentic Branding.
Yeah.
Is because back when I started to build brands, I think there's 3 books that were out, and I think one of them is still really good. It's called Strong Brands because it goes really deep. But what they were missing, all how to build brands. They didn't give you any exercises of how to build a brand.
Well, I know that's I want to see your sheets. I just want to fill your sheets in and be like, all right, Howard, what am I missing? Right? Because I do want to, right? Because it's like I quit as you were talking about. Like this is like a business evaluation for your brand. Where is your brand at? What's the evaluation? And like if you want your business to grow, right? You do a business evaluation. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do. You got to increase this. You got to decrease that. Right? And same here. It's like okay, let's not talk about the 60% of the stuff you're great at. Let's talk about the 40% gap where other companies are great and you're not great yet.
Right. Exactly.
Like
Exactly. That's what I look at. I look at the blind spots and I look at what they don't know, what they don't know. Those 2 buckets. What they don't know, what they don't know, and their blind spots. You're right on. And then boom. It's like that's why I have it where I trademark, how to actually, design a business to maximize its potential. Because most companies are at 25%. And then I've had lots of cases we brought to 90 plus, and it just changes. I love what you said. It changes the math.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting? No, I'm getting behind what you're saying because you're turning marketing into math, right? And the other thing is one of the questions I always get, right, is like, well, what was your margin at this point? Where were you at this point? Where were you at this point? And I also say marketing is so specific to an area. I never give advice or perspective on marketing. You've now almost commoditized the questions and the positioning of marketing that is industry and area agnostic. It's like, well, it works every time.
Right.
See, this is why I have random people on my podcast. I knew you from nobody, right? Like, right. I'm like, how do you say your last name? Good, let's go. But because I love learning new shit. Even like because I didn't know you. I don't know how you all of a sudden I got an email saying, hey, you want to be on the podcast? And Taylor, our producer's like, this guy looks pretty smart. He wrote a book. I'm like, all right, let's have him on the podcast. Like, I love it. And I've also had cheesesteak sales guys on here that just they're pitching to you the whole time, and like that's not. Right. They work themselves. They work themselves out. No. It's yeah. I wasn't concerned here. So you took the time to write a nice email, and everything was good. So we're in a great spot. All right. Well, let's go to the big finish. We're wrapping up. We're at the top of the hour. What was your top takeaway from today's conversation?
Well, I had several. My top takeaway.
Yeah. You got a couple. I don't give a shit. It's your show, man. Yeah. Top takeaways.
Well, the top take. I love. First of all, I love the questions that you asked, and I love that what you've been doing with your own brand, and I love the fact that you're filling in the gaps in your mind. Like, okay, yeah, I got that, but I'm not quite sure about that. Oh, that's new. Okay, what I the top. So that was a big takeaway is that your interaction as an interviewer was outstanding, and I've been doing this I've been speaking for 35 years. I can't even tell you how many podcasts I've been on to blow you away. But I love your down to earth interviewing style. I love that you are actually a vet, and I love that you serve. That for me, that's a big deal for me. I love how smart you are, like how quick you are to evaluate something, and then how to actually look at how do you apply it. Because most people don't know they might hear something, but they don't know how to apply it. And I saw your mind working very quickly on that. And I'm really hoping that people from this interview start to take some of these things from us.
Oh yeah,
you're really moving to action, right? Like this is for them, but I'm just telling them what was the takeaways for me is that you take action, and that's one of the biggest things when it comes to, for me, entrepreneurs. They might go, oh, this is great. Let's chalk it off. That a great interview, or they go to a seminar, like they're seminar junkies. But most of them don't take action.
No action.
Okay.
No.
Exactly. So for those who are listening to this, the biggest takeaway you could do is listen to what and rewind and re-listen to this is literally take action when you hear like something as a gold nugget. Take action with it. But so your interviewing style, I absolutely love, and I love that what you're doing because I think it's totally relevant when it comes to the waste removal. And whether it's like commercial or whether it's residential, it's a big deal right now. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. The only thing too, by the way, just a little giveaway. I just finished a course getting certified here in LA as a small business. I'm finding out that on of course, state to state and even federal level, there's so much money that quote unquote the government needs to give away. And one of them is the gentleman I've been working with, Jack. He's awesome. He knows the systems inside out with his government. A lot of them go to vets. You should definitely check into this as far as where vets, okay, from the government standpoint, that they literally have to give money away to vets, and you have a great business, but you'll be able to. And by the way, I said, well, what about the RFPs? Because I've done this before. Because I actually helped brand the National Guards. Literally. The point being is it was like the RFP was about that thick, right? About 3 inches thick. They gotten really smarter about this, where it might be like 10 sheets of paper you need to fill in. So you should definitely check into this.
I love that. Make that, if you could make that introduction for me. Cool. No, my top takeaway here is the fact that there is more currency in your brand than money, and there's a way to articulate it. Because I'm always like, well, I know it's good. I know it's brand awareness. Like, I know it'll pay off in time. But the fact that you have a way of saying, hey, this is brand currency. This is brand equity. These are the things that drive this. This is what you're missing. And then you said you can have cheap, fast, good. It's like, well, there's a way to have all three. So no, I'm going to definitely follow up with you because I'm, like tomorrow, today's September 30th, we're recording this. Tomorrow, Q4 starts, right? We're doing a Q4 planning on Thursday of this week. And marketing going into next year it's always something, right? We spend time and energy on. We don't always spend time on branding. So this is a great opportunity for us to make sure our brand is saying what we want it to say, establish the rules and parameters. So then when we do go to spend money on marketing, it's more execution, less decision making. That's what I'm hearing. And that's what I'm excited about. So Howard, I will definitely follow up with you. I certainly do not always say that when I'm on the show, when I interview people. I'm really excited to see what can come of this to make our company better. Right at the end of the day, I'm a small business owner, and I grind every day. I get to do this podcast because the work done out in the field by our guys, and we need to make money every day in order for me to continue to meet people like you and interview people like you and give away the answers for free here on the Trash Talk Business Podcast. So for the listeners out there, still have a chance to sign up October 25th, 26th, talk about brand ideology. I'm all about the environment. I'm all about giving away the answers for free. So we have our recycling summit mastermind, the 25th, 26th here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There are still a handful of seats available. Not only will we be talking about recycling and warehousing, we're also going to be talking about operations, networking, how to grow your influence in your area. So 25th, 26th of October, looking forward to seeing you there. I'm excited to have you on as listeners and continue to listen week in and week out. Coming up, we will be moving the Trash Talk Business Podcast to Mondays later in the month. So we'll make an official announcement. We'll be moving it to Tuesdays off of the Monday schedule on to Tuesdays. I know a lot of people are listening after the fact. You still will get your weekly Trash Talk Business Podcast. Next week, coming up, it's always your favorite week of the month. We got Andy Barton with our quarterly Trash Talk Business Update. We're going to be talking all things how Q3 wrapped up, what to look forward to in Q4 with Andy Barton. If you want to be a guest of the show, please hit us up at trashtalkbusinesspodcast.com. Apply to be on the show, and you, like Howard, need basically no credentials, although Howard has quite a few, to be on the show, be interviewed, and have an amazing conversation where everybody gets the chance to learn. So on behalf of, Taylor just texted me, we're switching to Tuesdays. It is Monday. We're switching to Tuesdays. Probably the 29th. We'll call it the 29th of October. So on behalf of Taylor, our producer, Howard, our guest, I'm Andy Weins, and this has been another amazing week of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. We will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Tap subscribe or follow to get the latest episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and tell a friend to listen. To learn more, visit trashtalkbusinesspodcast.com. Bye now.